During the holiday, I spoke to the president, and let's just say he didn't seem like he was in the best of moods. And I talked to him about the next 4 years. He said, I'm not going to talk to anybody about the next 4 years. I'm in the next 8 weeks, and I am not going to concede. He said, I won. I will not concede. And he is determined to fight on, and he, I think, has good reason to fight on. There is a movement now in the House and in the Senate to get people to get the Senate, when they're voting for the election certification, to vote against. Now, the GOP is saying, it's too late, it's too late. No, it's not. January 20th is too late. According to the Constitution, there is no other option than seat the president by January 20th. Has to be done. Until that time, I don't think it's... How is it bad for the Republic to actually go and look and actually have a detailed audit of this election? How is that bad for the Republic? I don't understand. Congressman Chris Stewart is one of the guys leading the movement in the House. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
Good morning, Glenn. Good to be with you. Thank you.
So tell me the case. Make the case that this is not just, this is insanity, as Jake Tapper would say.
Well, Jake and others who are saying this is an assault on democracy, it's just nonsense. There are millions, tens of millions of Americans who look at this election and they have absolutely legitimate concerns regarding it. And how can we go forward and not try to answer those questions? We owe it to these Americans. We owe it to all Americans. Frankly, we owe it to the Biden administration. They shouldn't want to go into office with this cloud hanging over their head. They shouldn't want these questions to be out there. Virtually everyone is better served if we can assure everyone that this election has been free and fair and there's integrity in it. And honestly, Glenn, no one can say that at this point. Now, you can stick your head in the sand and say, well, I don't see any evidence of fraud or electoral misconduct, but you are sticking your head in the sand if you say that. There's clear evidence of it. Now, is there enough to overturn the election? We don't know. And that's the central question, and that is the thing that the American people deserve to know.
But, Chris, all the courts have heard all of this, and they've thrown everything out.
Yeah. So here's the thing on that. The courts actually haven't heard this evidence. In almost every instance, and in fact, in every instance that I know of, the courts have ruled on very narrow issues of the law. Did Pennsylvania, for example, violate their own constitution by the way they conducted their election? That's a technical question. And by the way, they almost certainly did. Questions of evidence. There are questions regarding, again, technical issues of the law. The only bodies who have actually been presented with evidence are the legislative bodies, the legislators in Pennsylvania and Arizona and Georgia. And you have dozens of them, many dozens of these legislators who have said, Congress, don't certify these electorals. There's enough misconduct, but we don't believe you are assured of the integrity of this election. The bodies who have actually seen the evidence, not the courts who have only issued on technical issues, the bodies who have actually seen the evidence have written to Congress and said, don't certify these electorals.
So what does it mean if the Republicans will stand together and not certify the election? What would happen then?
Well, and this is where I think people are going to be disappointed, because the way the process is right now, so if you have one member of Congress and one member of the Senate who questions these and they officially object, then the bodies go into their separate chambers, the House and the Senate, they debate it for 2 to 3 hours, and then they vote. Well, I'm pretty certain that Ms. Pelosi and her colleagues are not going to vote to decertify these electorals. I mean, it's going to lose in the House. It's almost assured that that's true. And I'm not optimistic in the Senate. So will it change the election? I mean, to be very honest with the American people who are listening here, it probably won't. Does it deserve to be heard? It absolutely does. That's what we're trying to do here, is to present this evidence, to present the case for the American people. And at the end of that, then I guess different congressmen and senators are going to have to vote their conscience, what they think is true. I've already told you how I'm going to vote, Glenn, and I hope that others will join with me.
How many minds are being changed? Is anybody that you're in Washington now? Is this something that is really growing? Has the opportunity to grow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Glenn, since you and I talked last week, and in just the last few days, you've had, look, it's very difficult to know, and these news reports you say it's 100 or 140. I mean, honestly, they don't know that. They can't know that. Even as a member of Congress, I don't know that. But what I do know is that there's incredible growth and momentum in the House. When I first started talking to members and, my friends midweek last week and saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and here's the reason why, it has shifted dramatically from, well, are you sure you want to do that? Or, well, maybe I could think about it, to, hey, I'm with you. I see it now. I believe the same thing you do, and I agree with you. And I think there's going to be a surprising number of members of the House who are going to stand up and say, we can't with honesty say to the American people, I certify that these electorals represent the will of the people. And I don't know what that number is, Glenn, but I think it's going to be meaningful. And I can promise you it's growing, not day by day, it's growing hour by hour.
Well, I would expect that if the audience starts, does this even matter anymore when you call your congressman or write or text, or whatever? Does it matter anymore, Chris, what people do?
Yeah, it does. It does. And it gives us a sense of what the body politic is thinking, what the people are thinking. A lot of people that will call, they may get frustrated because they feel like, well, I'm just one voice and it doesn't really matter. But when you take them together, if you get a sense that the people in the heartland, the people of America, and just regular working folks like, that I represent and that I am and my family, if you get a sense that those people believe this and they believe it passionately and they believe it for reason, it can make a difference. And I tell you what, silence is the only other alternative, and that's not acceptable. I mean, to say nothing or to say, well, it won't matter if I call or I talk to my congressman. Well, the alternative is silence, not saying anything, and that's a far, far worse alternative.
Chris, tell me quickly what the Democrats have done to shut down Congress, to shut down the, any kind of debate in the coming year.
I tell you, Speaker Pelosi and these guys have just lost their minds on some of the stuff they've suggested in these rules that we're voting on today. The minority in Congress has very, very little voice, very little rights. It's not like the Senate where you have the filibuster and, one senator or a group of senators can really influence things. That's just not true in the House. It's 50% plus one vote, and you have all the power in the entire House. And so and it's kind of technical and it's not very interesting, so I won't go into details, but there are what we call a motion to recommit and other procedural things that we can do that allow us to force a vote on pieces of legislation. And that rule has been in place, Glenn, for more than 100 years, uninterrupted for more than 100 years until today. And Speaker Pelosi is going to say, you guys can pack sand, you're not going to be able to do it anymore. And it flies in the face of not just tradition and precedent, it flies in the face of common sense that she would say in such a closely divided House. It's not like she's got 100-seat majority. For heaven's sake, she's got a 4 or 5-seat majority. And she's saying to those of us in the minority, we don't care what you think. We're going to take away any ability you have to effect legislation and amendments on the floor. Yeah, and these nauseous rules, such as saying you can't say father, mother, brother, sister, aunt, uncle. To think that the American people would hear that and say, so my congressman can't or congresswoman can't stand on the floor of the House and thank his mother and father or his brothers and sisters. He has to thank his parents and his siblings. Talk about political correctness to the point where you feel like people have lost their minds.
I hope to God you guys get up, every single one of you get up and give a speech about your mother, your father, your sister, your brother. I mean,
exactly.
Enough.
I can't wait to do it. How many times can I include mother, father, sister, brother, man, and woman in a sentence? I'm going to find out on the House floor. And it's going to be fun. And please censure me. And by the way, that's another rule, that they want to be able to file ethics complaints against us if we say something on social media that they disagree with. Well, people say, well, what difference does it make an ethics complaint? Well, what that means is you may spend $100,000 or $200,000 defending yourself against an ethics complaint. It's a bludgeon to beat you about the head with a threat of financial loss for things that we say. Stalin would love it. The East German Stasi would have loved these kind of rules. The shut down debate, shut down your voice, make it financially a financial nightmare for you to be able to go speak. That's
are these
what they're seeking for.
These rules are being voted on today? Is the GOP at least in lockstep against them?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
This is a no-brainer for us. In fact, that's why I was a little late jumping on Glenn as I was voting on the first of these. Yeah, I mean, we believe they're poison to any political debate, and they're just against common sense, and the American people know it. The American people aren't stupid. They hear those kind of rules and think, well, that sounds a little extreme to me.
Chris, I appreciate it. I urge you to call your congressman, call your senator, make sure that they are voting for a 10-day audit. That's all they're asking for. When you're asking them not to certify the results, this is all constitutional. The only thing that won't change is the new president has to be in office January 20th. The founders were smart enough to know they'll play games with it, and then you'll be a year before you have a president, going through Congress and all this mess. So he must be seated by January 20th. For people to say, we don't have time to do... no, the more you delay, the less time you have. Get it done. Call your congressman and your senators today. Facebook, tweet, make sure you include them. Let them know how you want them to behave. I think just for the credibility of the vote, a hearing should happen. And if this doesn't happen, I urge the president to appoint a special counsel and have them do an investigation. It won't change the there's no way it can change the outcome after January 20th, but it needs to be exposed and cleaned up if there was any fraud. I don't like hearing from people who say, well, it's not enough to change the election. So you're okay with fraud? Is this the amount of fraud? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm not.